Hey guys, what is going on? So today I wanted to talk about the difference between progressing in the logbook and progressing our physiques and, kind of talk about how those are not as tightly correlated as many would lead you to believe. And so I was talking about this with my coach today, and I just kind of have this very hard time growing or increasing strength in a low rep range. And that is with the idea that I'm trying to stimulate hypertrophy, right? I'm really not too concerned about whatever weight I'm lifting. I'm not trying to, hit an all-time world record in a JM press or a leg press or something like that, right? And so it's not really about, hey, I want to get my one rep max up. Now, if I was going to do a bench, sure, I would do a strength program specifically just to increase that number. But when it comes to stimulating hypertrophy, there is not a goal in mind that I want to get a certain goal weight of this for a 5 rep max or this for a 1 rep max. It's literally just a tool in the toolbox for building muscle mass. And so what I've noticed for myself is that when I train close to failure in a lower rep range, not only is it very hard for me to progress, but oftentimes I actually regress in my training, or at least in that rep range that I'm shooting for. And this has been very frustrating for me because I've heard all these people talk about, working in the 4 to 8 rep range is the best for hypertrophy and has the lowest fatigue. And just in my experience, I've not found that to be the case. I've not found the fatigue to be low. I have not found my ability to progress the logbook to be good when training this way. However, I'm not going to neglect the idea that those sets are very stimulating. And I would say if we're trying to target fast twitch muscle fibers, working in that low rep range, especially if we're reaching a pretty close proximity to failure, that's going to be really good for targeting those high threshold motor units, which are the ones that are going to induce the most hypertrophy. So the way that I look at that low rep training is this is extremely potent. There's a lot of stimulus for a set. And in my case, cause a lot of fatigue, right? If I have a higher percentage of fast twitch fibers and they're getting fatigued a lot easier, which tends to be the case with fast twitch fibers, well, there's a much bigger cost to training that way when it comes to the overall recovery, overall fatigue, but there's a high stimulus as well. So when we talk about stimulus to fatigue ratio, those have very high stimulus, but they also have very high fatigue, at least for me personally. Now, I'm not going to say that that's true for the general population, but if those high threshold motor units are getting worked, plus we're working, some of the other ones downstream that are a little bit easier to recruit on a per set basis, those should be the most stimulating. And those are the hardest fibers to hit because they can only really be activated when we're, working at our absolute maximum and we're not in a super fatigue state. So for me, very fatiguing, very potent, but I have to use them sparingly, right? And so if I see that I'm regressing, if I do 400 pounds for a set of 5, and then the next week I'm doing it for a set of 4, that doesn't necessarily mean that I didn't grow any muscle in between that week. It doesn't mean that I'm regressing in my physique. It just means that I'm more fatigued. And on the flip side, I look at my higher rep sets and I'm like, I'm progressing really well over here, but it's just not necessarily representative of what is accumulating the most muscle mass. And so as I'm progressing in this area and I'm regressing in this area, am I just staying the same? Am I getting better? And I would say overall, we can look at the trend and say, if you are training, you're going close to failure, you're getting a lot of, volume in, or if you're not getting a lot of volume, at least you're, getting really stimulating sets in that lower volume environment, we should be trending up. And so as I'm going through a bulk, as I'm seeing my, strength go up over time, as I'm seeing muscle mass go up, I mean, it's pretty obvious to me that I'm making progress. But when I zoom in on a specific week, when I zoom in on a specific lift and I see that there's progression, it could be very easy to feel like that is not working. Now, if you are somebody who has the opposite problem where those high rep sets are very fatiguing, you add those into the mix and then, your progress goes down, there is still a stimulus that you're getting from that style of training, and that actually trains different things, right? So one is focused on higher threshold motor units, one needs a lot less volume, one is, very potent. The other one, on a per set basis, is not nearly as potent. right? A high rep set, something that's a little bit more endurance based, that is really not going to be very potent on a set to set basis, but there are adaptations that are going on in the body that can be beneficial for you down the line. So there can be some benefit to the mitochondria, there can be benefit to the cardiovascular system, there can be benefits to just overall work capacity that you're able to build. Plus, there is a, albeit weaker, but there is still some stimulus that is being presented in those higher rep sets. And as we stack those sets up over time, that is accumulating more stimulus. Now, if you are somebody who is also accumulating a lot of fatigue training that way, you also have to use that style of training more sparingly. And so somebody like myself, I can actually ramp up the volume on highly fatiguing, endurance training very high. And on the flip side, the low fatigue stuff is very fatiguing for me. And so you have to understand where you are at genetically and how you respond to things, but then also understand that your style of training dictates what you're good at. So if I favor a higher rep approach, there's the repeated bout effect in which I'm able to actually get better adaptations and respond faster and recover better as I continue to do that thing. So if you are favoring one style and you get really good at recovering from that, that can skew what you respond to for better or for worse, and vice versa. And so as somebody who just favors the thing that I was probably already pretty good at, which is the higher rep sets, then we skew those a little bit more, I'm going to be able to recover much better than the average person when it comes to that. So I would say we kind of just tend to lean into our strengths. So if you are genetically predisposed to recover a little bit better from low rep sets, plus that's all you do because, hey, that's what I'm good at, it's not that hard, well, you're going to be incredibly good at responding to that stimulus and being able to recover. But you have a lot of opportunity to build these other areas that you're not even tapping into. For somebody like myself, I've never really gone super high reps. It's not something that I've consistently kept in my training, but I have been on the higher end of the rep range. And so I'm not as adapted to this other side. Plus, there's probably a genetic component to that as well. And so even if there is a regression in terms of your strength, even if there is a fatigue that is building up, that's a huge area of opportunity for you to actually progress on those, get better at adapting to them, and then you can put them in the mix a little bit more and more. But whatever it is, there is a potent stimulus out there that you are not adjusted to adapting to. And as you progress and as you develop the ability to adapt to that, you're going to be able to get more of that stimulus over time, which is only going to help you progress in other areas of your training. So if we see a regression, it does not mean that we are regressing in muscle mass. It may mean that we are accumulating fatigue, but it does not mean we are regressing. It is part of the process. If you talk to a power lifter, they generally accumulate fatigue just to let it drop, and that lets them hit their biggest numbers. And so that's why there's a big argument for undulating volume, undulating, frequency and how much we're actually doing something like that. Or in terms of periodization, are we just doing the same thing week in, week out, no variety? Or are we getting better at a variety of things over time? It may not be every single week we do something like that, but over the course of a few months, we want to be able to train specific traits to get better at those simultaneously so we can raise our ceiling of what we're capable of doing. And so all that to say, just because you are not progressing in a lift, or even if you are regressing, it could mean that you're just getting a very potent stimulus that you are not adjusted to adapting to yet. And so that's a huge area of opportunity. And I would definitely recommend not skipping over that, but also understand that if there's a potent stimulus, you don't need a ton of it right away. And as you get better at adjusting for that, you can increase the volume and frequency in which you do that. And then you just keep playing the game and keep rising and keep leveling up. So hopefully that can help some of you guys. I know it's kind of a different mindset when it comes to progress, because we just want to go up, up, up all the time. But sometimes we need to understand the things that are hard and the things that make it seem like we're not going anywhere or even getting worse. That is where the growth actually happens. And that is not necessarily the only thing we should do, but it's something that we need to get better at to get rid of the bottleneck. If you were bad at endurance training and you had no cardiovascular fitness, huge area of opportunity for you. If you're like me and you're not, too good at the low rep sets, those are very fatiguing. Well, if you can unlock the ability to respond to that a little bit better, that's a bottleneck. And so definitely keeping all those things in the mix, I think is going to help a lot of people out. So hopefully that can be helpful. Anyway, that's all I got to say about that. I will keep you updated and I'll talk to you soon.